Hey guys, this is Lucas from Better Coding Academy, and in this video I'm going to show you how to create a full CI/CD pipeline using AWS CodePipeline. So I've just got a basic React app over here, and I'm just going to run this one real quick. So just yarn watch like that, and I'm going to show you what it looks like right now. So right now, if we go to localhost 1234, you'll see that it's just a counter. It says count 0, and then we can go -1, and then we can go +1, and it'll go either way. So that's essentially the whole purpose of this thing here, is it's just a really simple counter, but I'm going to show you how to deploy this using AWS CodePipeline to an S3 bucket. So now let's have a look at that. We've got code over here. Specifically, we have tests for each of our components. So the root component is just for rendering properly, and then the counter component is just so that we can check that the actual counting works properly. So we can just control C this here, and if we do yarn test, you'll notice that it runs jest, and then it shows that both pass. But then if I go here and do something stupid, like change -1 to be -109 for some reason, and then we run yarn test again, you'll notice that we get an error for this test because the value is incorrect. So anyways, now let's make sure that this is running just fine and it is working properly. Now that we've done that, what we're going to do is, first and foremost, we need to make sure that this code appears on GitHub. So I have a GitHub repository over here. Specifically, this one's currently empty, just Parker Lucas AWS CodePipeline demo. So I'm going to just quickly commit this up onto the repository. So I'm going to go here and just set up a repository real quick. And I already have a git ignore file to get rid of this stuff up here, but I'm just going to do this bit real quick. So add it all in and just commit this. And I'm just going to call it from video and then save this real quick. Close that and then just do a quick git push, git remote add origin, git at github.com /Parker Lucas / AWS CodePipeline demo.git. So now we can do git push origin master. And now that that is done, we can go over to GitHub, and you'll notice that we have our first commit here that says from video. So now that we have this commit here, what we're going to do is we are going to add in the necessary code and configuration to get this working inside of AWS. So first and foremost, we're going to go to CodePipeline. Now, if yours doesn't say CodePipeline over here, you can just search for it and find it here. Essentially, this is Amazon's solution for continuous delivery, also known as CD. So inside of CodePipeline here, we are going to click Create Pipeline, and then this will take us to this page here, and we are going to call it AWS CodePipeline Demo. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm going to stick with this name here. And now I'm going to click Next. And then for the source provider, I'm going to choose GitHub, and I'm going to connect to GitHub. So this will basically connect to my code, which is here. I already have logged in and basically authenticated to allow it to do that. For the repository, just choose the one that you're working on. I'm going to use Parker Lucas AWS CodePipeline Demo. So I'm going to select that one right here. And then for the branch, you just choose master. The reason it is master is because that is the master branch we're using here. So now that we've done that, we can click Next. And for the build provider, we are going to choose AWS Code Build because that's what I chose to use for this video. So now that we've done that, we can click Create Project here, and we are going to create our Code Build project. So here, I'm just going to call this one AWS CodePipeline Demo as well. You can call it whatever you want. And for the environment section here, I'm going to configure this specifically for the needs of my project. I use managed image over here. I use Ubuntu, and then I use runtime standard and image AWS Code Build standard 1.0. This works because Code Build only supports in terms of Node.js versions 8 and 10. However, my React app works on version 12. So I'm going to use version 12. And in order to use version 12, you have to use AWS Code Build Standard 1.0. Or actually, technically speaking, otherwise you have to choose an installed runtime. It gets quite complicated. You can go figure it out in the super complicated docs. But as for now, we're going to stick with this. But just note that these settings are specifically for React and specifically for Node.js, I guess. So if yours are slightly different, then you might need to do things differently here. So now that we have this, we are going to go all the way down here and click Continue to CodePipeline. Now that will take a little while to load, but you saw that it actually closed itself. And now that we've done that, we've got AWS CodePipeline Demo here. Now that we've done this, we can click Next. And for the deploy provider, we are going to be deploying to S3. Now, the reason we're going to deploy to S3 is because I have a React app. So I'm going to just directly build it using code build. And then the final dist files there, which contain the bundle.js and all of that kind of stuff, we're going to put directly into S3. So we're going to create a bucket here, and I'm going to call mine CodePipeline counter. demo or something like that. You can call it whatever you want, but this is what I'm going to call mine. So now that I have this, we've got CodePipeline counter demo here, and I'm just going to save this for now. I'm not going to add public access settings or anything like that. I'm going to do that in a later part of the video. So let's go back here, and you won't be able to see it straight away, so we just have to choose a different region and then click back, and then we've got that one right there. And for the S3 object key, this one basically means that once you deploy, by default, CodeBuild will produce a zip file, and this zip file will be sent to Amazon S3. However, in my case, I actually don't want a zip file. I want it to be extracted at the root. So we don't need to specify a deployment path because we're going to extract it at the root of the S3 bucket. So that way we can see it directly. Now that we have this, we can click next and go down to the bottom and click create pipeline. So now we have our pipeline created, and by default it will try to deploy. However, this won't actually work because our code build has not been set up, or correctly speaking, we have not set up a configuration file to get this working. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into Visual Studio Code over here, and I'm going to create a new file at the root, and I'm going to call this one buildspec.yml. So this is a YAML file, and specifically we are going to be using this to work with AWS. So what you need to write here, and you can find most of this stuff in the documentation, is firstly version 0.2 and then phases, and the first phase we're going to work with is called the install phase. So specifically for the install phase, we're going to be doing a couple things. The first thing we're going to do is install node 12. The second thing is going to be install yarn. The third thing is going to be in the second section here, so install commands and then pre-build commands. We're going to install dependencies. And then for build commands, we're going to be doing tests and then build. And then once this is done, this is our whole process. Every single time we run code through the continuous delivery pipeline, we first go install node 12 and then install yarn, install dependencies, then we do the test, and then we do the build. So firstly, let's have a look at installing node 12. Remember how we selected Ubuntu for this? So the way that we install it has to be specifically for Ubuntu. So in order to install node 12, let's go back here and go to node.js. And on the website here, we can click on other downloads over here. Let's have a look at installing it via package manager. So specifically this section here, we've got Debian and Ubuntu-based Linux distributions, and we just need to click on this, which is provided by node source. So now inside of this file here, you'll notice that we have support specifically for version 12 for Ubuntu. So we're going to grab these two lines here, which we're going to run. So we're going to go here and write two lines. So first line is going to be that, second line is going to be this. Now we just need to change this a little bit. So get this over there. We can close that anyways. We need to get rid of sudo. Because it doesn't, basically everything here runs as an administrator, so you don't need to specify that, and you also don't need to specify this here. So now we can keep these two commands, and actually you don't need to write apt-get. In the latest version of Ubuntu, apt is already the same as apt-get and apt-update and all of that kind of stuff, so we can just write apt here like that. Now for installing yarn, we're going to go to yarnpkg.com, which is the yarn website. We're going to click on install yarn, and we're going to choose Ubuntu. So for the Ubuntu version here, we first need to do this here to configure the repository. So grab these two lines and put them right here. So that's the line on top and this line here. Get rid of sudo there and get rid of sudo here as well. And now we have the two things for yarn, and then apt install, no install recommends yarn, so that we don't install node.js again. So now that we have these two, we're going to go here, and for install dependencies, it's really simple. All we have to do is type yarn, and this will install all the dependencies for us. Now what we can actually do is along the way here, we can actually write echo statements here. So we can write like installing yarn ... and then we can write this one like installing node 12 ... And then we can do here, this one can be installing dependencies ... So we have like these kinds of messages that tell us how we're going. And then for this part here, we can do echo testing and then echo building. So then for the testing, all we have to do is run yarn test, and yarn test here matches our test script here. And then for yarn build, which is going to be our build command, we just do that. And that will delete the dist directory and rebuild it using parcel. So now that we've done that, what we're going to do is write a different section here. So go back to the very left-hand side, write artifacts, and then we're going to do files, and then just do this section here, like that. And this will get all the files, and then discard paths is going to be no, and then base directory is going to be dist. So the dist here basically means that this will be the base directory of our final build. So that is what we're going to use. We're not going to bundle all of this stuff, only the dist directory. So now that we have this file, what we're going to do is open this thing up again, go git status, and let's just commit this file. So I'm going to commit this and call it added buildspec.yaml specifically for CodePipeline. So now that we've done that, we can save this, close that, and then do git push. Let's do set upstream origin master. So that way we don't need to write this every single time. Now that we do that, I'm going to quickly go to CodePipeline, and you'll notice that it actually started to compile straight away. So that is because of GitHub webhooks. It figures out that when there is a commit to the master branch, it automatically starts to compile. So in your code, you can imagine that you might be working on different branches. And for example, you might have the master branch, you might have a whole bunch of development branches. So then when commits are made to development branches, nothing really happens. But when commits are made to the master branch, then all of a sudden CodePipeline can be triggered and we can run the tests on code build. So then in that case, you might only restrict pushes to the master branch to be only by a certain few users, or only with certain permissions or certain tests being passed locally. So all this kind of stuff is just an extra line of defense to prevent this whole CodePipeline from running amok. But this is something really cool, and I really love using CodePipeline simply because of how automated it is. So you see now the build is currently running. We can have a look at it ourselves by clicking on details. And we can have a look here. You'll notice that it says installing node 12. It's installing there, and it's installing all of this. And then now we are currently still installing node.js. So we can wait on that. It's doing that thing there. Now it's installing yarn. Yarn is installing. Now it's installing the dependencies. It's doing the fetch for that and the resolving. So this is pretty typical yarn stuff. So now that we've done that, you'll see that it is now in the testing phase. So it's currently running jest, it is going through both tests, and both tests have passed successfully, which is really cool. Now it's building, it's in the final stage, it is building it, and then after the build finishes, this stage should be complete. So you see that we have built, and then post-build is finished, and we have completed the build process. You'll notice that the build has succeeded, and the deploy now has just also succeeded. So if I go over here into S3 and I click on this, what would have been empty S3 bucket, now you see we have index.html, we have the JS file, and we have the map for the JS file as well. So now that we have these, now let's make this S3 bucket public. So what we need to do for that is firstly go over here into properties, go to static website hosting, and click use this bucket to host a website. And all we have to do is just specify index.html for the index document here, click save, and then go to permissions, and we are going to uncheck this so that we have public access, and just type in confirm here, click confirm over there. We are going to go to bucket policy, and for the bucket policy, you're going to write in this section here. Now, I'm not going to lie, I found this section online and it worked well for me, so I'm just using the same one here. So for the name here, we are going to call this one CodePipeline counter demo. So now that we have that, this is for getting all the objects, and essentially it allows us to get all of the objects inside of this bucket. So now that we've done this and we click save, you'll notice that we get a little warning here which says that this has public access. So now that we've done this, we can go back into overview and we can click on index.html and it will give us an object URL. Now this is a public URL, and if you click on this, you'll notice that it shows our counter. So count 0, -1, and then +1. So this is super duper cool, and that was the whole AWS CodePipeline demo. But I just want to show you one more time how cool this is. So inside of here, instead of just writing counter and the number here for -1 and +1, let's add in 2 more buttons. So let's do one for -2, and let's do one for +2. So now we have 4 buttons here. Let's just make sure that this works just fine. So I'm going to run parcel real quick and go to here, refresh, and we have -2 and we have +2. And now let's add in the test for this as well. Decrement button, let's rename this one to -1 button, -1 button EL, and this one can be +1 button EL. And then let's add in another button, so +2 button EL here. This is +2, and this one is -2, so -2 button EL. And we have our 4 buttons. We have -1 button EL, -2 button EL. So after this, we expect the value to be -3, +1 button EL, we expect the value to be -2, and then +2 button EL, we expect the number to be 2. And then we can just do a random +1 again at the bottom, and that should be 3. So now let's save this and Control-C that, and let's do a quick yarn test. And our test has an error. Did I mess up here? Well, we've got a text content of 0, -1, -3, -2. Oh, my bad. So this one here is meant to be 0, and this one here is meant to be 1. Totally mistaken there. And I'm going to do this one more time. And you see that both the test has passed properly. So that was totally my bad. I failed year 1 mathematics. So anyways, what we're going to do now is we are going to git status again, git add dot, git status, just to check that we have all the files staged. And then I am going to do updated counter component to include -2 and +2 buttons. So now we save this, close that, and then we do a git push, and now we can watch the magic go on over here. You see, when I was a kid, I actually really enjoyed watching washing machines, and I think part of the process was seeing the start to the finish, how the clothes went in, and how they spun and spun and spun, and how it did its own thing, and humans didn't have to control the whole process, which is why I think I'm also very fascinated by this. Now you see that it's coming through once again. We just went through that. Now we're doing the build process. I love watching this whole thing happen, so I'm going to leave it here, and we are going to see the whole process finish. Okay, so now we're on to the deploy stage, and we're nearly done. You can feel the excitement. It is awesome. It is great to see the code deploying itself, making me redundant one day at a time. But now we're going on to the deploy stage, and the deploy stage just finished. So now I can go straight back here, refresh, and now you see it says count 0, but with a -2 and a +2 button on the page. It is absolutely beautiful, and I love how easy it is to set up AWS CodePipeline. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and look into what I do for CI and CD. This has been Lucas with Better Coding Academy, and see you guys later.